3 episodes in one go, so I'll just do one big video for all of them. There's so much to talk about. So if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. Careful for spoilers for the first 3 episodes. If you have not seen them yet, he has become the new Dark Lord. After Morgoth was defeated, and probably one of the biggest reveals here is what Sauron looked like before he was killed for the first time, or for his body was destroyed for the first time. This actor is Jack Lowden. Charlie Vickers plays Sauron's other forms.
Later during the sign most pleasing, which we see him do later when he's trying to trick Celebrimbor into forging the rest of the Rings of Power. They confirm the tower that we saw at the beginning of Season 1, Episode 1, where Sauron rallied Morgoth's remaining forces is for a doorway in the far north. It says, the dawn of the Second Age, because they demarcate the passing of the First Age to the Second Age. With Morgoth's actual defeat, like it became the Second Age the minute he was defeated. Just like the Third Age begins right after Sauron's body is destroyed for the second time. We saw that battle at the very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. They're probably going to wind up ending the Rings of Power series on that actual battle. During his speech, he quotes the line power not of the flesh, but over flesh, which he's repeated multiple times. Others in on his face. You can hear him whispering in an incantation in the Black Speech, probably sensing that his body is about to be destroyed, like his light forces flowing out. So he's probably performing some kind of magic that will help him return in another form. This might just be part of what he does each time this happens that he came from. But notice he picks up Sauron's crown. That'll become important later because we see Sauron fighting Galadriel using his crown. So at some point, he will get his crown back.
Then we see a much longer montage to explain what happened to Sauron exactly, step for step after this, in how he took his Halbrand form. And if it wasn't clear, they're condensing the timeline a lot, also probably referring to Valinor, the Undying Lands. There are a lot of references to Valinor during the episodes. Then we basically find out how he wound up on that life raft when he met Galadriel for the first time. It wasn't totally clear if he caused the sea creature to them creating the elven rings, and then sort of create the other rings for the other races. Then Aaron jumps over the falls to avoid having to turn the rings over to Gil-galad, who wants to use them to basically heal the blight on their, like this black blight, this on the tree and throughout the rest of their lands, and basically stop the fading of Elf idea. Then back in Mordor, notice the BES starts to sense Sauron's power and begins to submit to him. He sort of turns it to his will eventually, which they reference in a bunch of other scenes with different characters to the idea that Sauron worms his way into your mind and learns to control you. There are a couple of funny foreshadowing moments with Waldrag here. Like he just goes all day beating him. So bad. Call on Waldrag for insulting the person that he's been worshiping all this time, who also then tells him that the minute he gets out of here, he's going to kill him. Then we go to the Grey Havens and we meet Círdan. The shipwright, he's meant to be the oldest elf living in Middle-earth, one of the wisest and most noble ones. All the way from the First Age to at the end of Return of the King. He's the one who captained the ship that took Gandalf, Frodo, Bilbo, Galadriel, everyone to Valinor. When he says perfection exists only in Valinor, that's probably because the immortal elves, which get referenced many times during the show. Why he's so obsessed with creating something as great as being or created, which he's been using to craft the Rings of Power, when he looks across the sea at the sunset, he's basically looking to Valinor, when Gil-galad chides Galadriel, saying that he wants to cast her to the moors. When she says she vows to put things right and not stop until Sauron is defeated. Cúrd then makes a whole bunch of references back to the One Ring of Power, which Sauron will eventually create when he says they have so much power, they can change the heart of any who beheld them. The joke is, the Rings of Power cause people to fear those who wear them, so they change their hearts, but for worse, for like in a bad way. Then Elrond sort of wises up and starts to suspect Sauron's larger plan to use the rings to enslave everyone. Killed, and then mentions Elrond's father Arundel, whose statue is in the bay at Númenor, is running around trying to save the world from Sauron. His father is essentially just riding across the sky. Kiernan then starts talking about one of the major battles from the War of Wrath against Morgoth, and he describes the sinking of the continent. When Elrond questions whether or not Galadriel is still under Sauron's influence, he's not totally wrong. Part of the idea is that once he worms his way into your mind, he is there forever. You kind of see that in a bigger way with Celebrimbor's story, where like Sauron definitely has him on his hook. Then we see Círdan about to cast the rings to the ruins of Valyrie into this deep chasm. But there's this weird attack on. Is it like this big splash? Like a creature attacks his ship, causing him to look at the rings and take them out, falling under their sway. Back in the east, the stranger in Nori. Find out as Poppy from Season 1 has been the one that's been tailing in this whole time, but she's brought a map of the area with her that helps them escape the area where they've basically been trapped, running in circles. There's another cool transition using the map. Love the way they use these transitions, confirming that they are in Rhûn. Back in Mordor, Eöthr basically dumps his entire backstory on Sauron, not knowing that it's bending him to his will. Just like we saw him do, giving the meat to the beast a little while ago. And the way he's doing the same thing with the elves, the races of Middle-earth with the rings of power. So Adar is basically telling the story of how he came to be Sauron's slave for a time until he tried to kill him. You can also see the way that Sauron's face changes while he's telling the story, in basically whines of tricking the rings of power. But notice how pissed off he is to have to kneel and swear fealty to Adar. But he does try to twist it in his way. Like he says he's going to swear fealty to the Lord of the area. But that's basically him, like he is the Dark Lord. Basically, Sauron is swearing fealty to himself, and they pay off his threat to Waldrag to kill him. Having the bees that he freed rip him to shreds. You died how you live like a total crapbag. Gil-galad sings a song about the fading of the elves until Círdan returns with the rings of power. Notice he's wearing his ring, Naraya, the ring of fire. The blue ring falls that Gil-galap's feet, which is the ring. He eventually wears a Vilya, the blue ring of air, and Nenya, the white ring of water, falls for Galadriel, which she winds up wearing. Notice when they put all the rings on and start to use them, it actually heals the blight in the area like it burns it out of the tree. But while this is happening, they start playing that song where the shadows lie again as a reminder that Sauron's plan is still causing all this to happen, like it's all part of his master plan. Just as Sauron returns to Celebrimbor in Halbrand form in search to enact his plan, but because of the end of Season 1, he has to wait at the gate until Celebrimbor invites him in. Then we get Episode 2, which was titled Where the Stars Are Strange, which is a reference to them finally making it to Rhûn in the east, which the movies never really got into that much. There's another cool transition, it's basically just the influence of Sauron, the spreading of the power through the rings of power. There's a big earthquake, and I think the dwarves' theory about what caused it is half right, like 50% correct. Part of it was the Eregion Pishin of Mount Doom, but also, I think it has something to do with what they were doing with the Balrog waking up. There was a lot of Balrog in the Season 2 trailer, so we'll see how they invoke that, because the Balrog doesn't wind up killing all the doors, running the rest of them out of Khazad-dûm until much later in the timeline. So, I do not expect to see the fall of Khazad-dûm during the events of Rings of Power, at any point. They might just continue to tease that it will happen eventually in the future. Like a long ways off, we get a brand new intro scene that's meant to show the forging of all the new Rings of Power.